Hi, and welcome to my channel. My name is Bryndís, and in today's video I want to talk to you about all the books that I read in the month of February. I read a lot of books, 12 books, although one of them might not actually have been a book I read. I will explain later, but I actually, when I was preparing this video, I had to sit down and do some serious reflecting, because I'm wondering, how can I have read 12 books? How is that even possible? I have a full-time job. I work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And, this month I've actually, I'm not a super social person, but this month I've actually been going out more than often before. So it's not like I just sit here and do nothing except read. Although, you might be forgiven for thinking that, considering I read so much, and some of the books were quite big. But I think that after doing some reflecting and thinking, because I am not trying to be a consumer of books. I don't try to read as many books as I can. I don't want to consume books. I want to enjoy the books I read. I don't want to just hurry up reading a book, go to the next and reading it just so that I can show that I read so much the month or whatever. So I was just trying to reflect. I'm not making any type of value judgment here. If that's how you like it, then that's fine. Different things bring people joy. So there's nothing wrong with wanting to read a lot, But my main goal in life, now that I'm kind of getting close to 50 and I'm in perimenopause and I'm just discovering that life isn't about hustling and being productive all the time and getting things done. Life is also just about enjoying it in the moment. So that's really what I'm trying to focus on in regards to reading as well, that I actually have a chance to enjoy the book. When I'm done with the book, I will take a little while to kind of reflect on it, think about it, and do stuff like that. And, so that it's not just like dum type of thing, because I'm very prone to being like that in everything. I'm very much checking off the task type of a person. So I'm really working very hard to make sure that reading is not that reading is slow, intentional, enjoyable, and kind of relaxing. But I realized that, first of all, I have not watched anything on TV or any movies the entire month of February. And basically, the only thing I watch on TV is YouTube, and it's been 95% booktube in the last couple of months. And so when you are watching people talking about the books they have read, or they're going to read, it makes me want to read. So that's one of the reasons probably why I've been reading so much. I have not been spending my leisure time watching movies or TV. I've just been reading. And I've also been very active in February. I've been going for walks. Because I've been meeting people, I've been taking the bus here and there, and it takes time. So I always have an audiobook in my ears. I've been walking from work to home, which is like an hour walk, 45 minutes to an hour, because the weather it's been sunny and beautiful weather for the majority of February. It's been so nice. So I've just been my life in February has just been very reading positive, reading aiding me in my reading. So I feel quite good about having read so much, and I feel that I did enjoy it, and it was kind of a wonderful experience and not just me hurrying up to get through the books. Although there were a couple of books that were not, I did not enjoy all the books that I read. Some of them were just not good. Some of them were okay, but there were a few very good ones. So excuse the very long intro, But let's go into, and I'm gonna give you short reviews of all the books that I read in January. I'm gonna talk about the books in the order that I read them, and I'm really gonna try not to make this video an hour long, but I just love talking about books, so I tend to get quite chatty when I do that. So, but anyway, yeah, as you can see, I've already started. But anyway, let's just start by the first book that I read. So this was a physical book. This is a biography of the man here, Árni Magnússon, by Már Jónsson. So this is an Icelandic biography in Icelandic. I don't think you can even find it translated. I don't know, maybe into Danish. But anyway, so this was a very interesting and fun read. I actually started it at the end of January. It is quite the book. So it's very informative and interesting to me because I'm really interested in history. So it does kind of depict the life in Iceland and Copenhagen in Denmark in the late 17th century and early 18th century. So Árni, this man here, he was a really interesting historical figure. I'm just gonna put this heavy. So he became a scribe for the Royal Antiquarian, which is kind of the people who were taking care of old manuscripts and kind of historical things. And then he became an antiquarian and a professor later at the Copenhagen University. He went to Copenhagen just before, like maybe at 18, 19, something like that. And he spent the rest of his life there. He had no interest in living in Iceland, which I cannot blame him, considering his descriptions of life in Iceland. It was miserable. So what he is famous for are two things. He went around Iceland with another man, a colleague of his, he had like two reasons to do that. Firstly, they were doing a national census of the population of Iceland, and so they did that in the years 1702 to 1703, and it was published in 1703, and it showed like the population of Iceland, where everybody lived, like men and women, and who had property, who didn't, and all these type of different things. And really interesting, actually. There were just over 50,000 people living in Iceland in 1703. And interestingly enough, this census is actually the oldest surviving census of an entire population of a nation that is still like you can still access today. And it in 2013 or something, it was listed on UNESCO's Memory of the World Register. So it was a feat traveling around Iceland, because they could only do it for maybe 3 or 4 months of the year because of the weather, and just there were no roads. I mean, it was just miserable. But so they managed to do that. It was quite the feat. Another thing that he is known for, and probably most known for and kind of beloved in Iceland for, is that while he was traveling around the country back in the day, he also collected manuscripts of the Icelandic sagas. A lot of those manuscripts would have been lost forever if he had not saved them, basically. And he took the manuscript with him to Copenhagen and like copied them and stuff like that, so that they could be survived, like the Poetic Edda and other really important manuscripts. So he did. Yeah, it was really fun reading about his life, but also kind of the justice system in Iceland, the injustices, the social injustices, and the relationship between Iceland and Denmark, and the Danish king, who didn't really give a damn. He just wanted to, have money so he could, go to war with Sweden and buy horses and dresses for his queen, basically. And anyway, it was a really interesting read, and I'm really interested in history, so therefore it really, I found it fascinating. And I'm giving it 4 stars. The second book that I read in February was a romance, contemporary romance, which is really not my thing usually. It's called A Brave Person, and it's the first in her Across the Pond series. And as you can see, I read it on my Kindle. So this was a very cute little romance between an American young woman who moved to London, and romance and in suit, what is it the word? Something like that. And I thought it was really cute and just easy and fun to read and cozy. Very quickly, I think I read it in like basically almost a sitting, maybe a couple of sittings. And yeah, it was just really cute and lovely, and I enjoyed it, and gave it 4 stars. And then we come to my big book. Well, there were a couple of big books in the month, but this is my cat. Shirley by Charlotte Bronte. I mostly listened to this as an audiobook, but I did read maybe the last 10, 12 chapters. So this was really interesting. I did enjoy it, and I'm giving it 4 stars, but I definitely did not love it. There are some really funny parts in this book, and there are also just parts where I'm just like, no, why are you? No. But yeah, and there are some really interesting discussion about gender roles, how a woman should be, and stuff like that. That I think was probably very provocative for the time. I do want to do some like a more in-depth review of the book when I'm gonna do like a separate video talking about all of Charlotte's books. But yeah, so yeah. The 4th book I read is The Word is Murder by Anthony Horowitz, and this is the first book in his series with Horowitz and Hawthorne. This was a really lovely, cozy little, well, I don't think it's a cozy mystery, but it was a very enjoyable mystery. I mean, there was some brutal murders going on, but it was fun. I liked how he wrote himself into the book, and I just thought it was fun, and I didn't want to stop listening to it. It was very enjoyable, and I'm giving it 4 stars. The 5th book of the month of February was The Life of Charlotte Bronte by Elizabeth Gaskell. And this, as you can see as well, I read on my Kindle. So I have a video coming up at some point in March where I'm gonna go into a more in-depth review of this book. I thought it was very interesting and informative, that tells the life story of Charlotte, or at least her adult life story, through her letters for the most part. And I'm giving it 4 stars. Book number 6 was an audiobook, and it was Iron Gold, the 4th book in the Red Rising Saga series by Pierce Brown. Oh my god, did I love this book! I think it may be my favorite of the series so far, and it was so much fun catching up with the characters from the previous 3 books, at least those who are still alive. if you know, you know. But also there were some new characters that I really started to like and love. And at first I was a little bit annoyed because the first 3 books were all from Darrow's point of view. I think that I remember that correctly. And there was only one, I listened to them as well as audiobooks, and there was only one narrator, Tim Gerard Reynolds is his name. And he's like, has like this Irish accent, And I really enjoyed listening to him narrate the first three books. And now in this book, in number 4, called Iron Gold, there are 3 points of views. So we have Darrow's point of view, which is narrated still by Tim Gerard Reynolds. And then we have 2 other points of view. So there are different narrators for those. Now, I do think that is not a bad way to do it. Instead of having just one narrator who kind of changes his voice or her voice or their voice throughout the narration, you have just different narrators for each point of view. Actually, I think that is a smart way to do it. But at first, I was very frustrated, especially because I found one of the narrators a little bit difficult to get used to. But as I got into it, I loved it. I thought it was so brilliantly done, how we got the point of view of other characters who are connected to Darrow, but also not. I don't want to say anything to spoil anything. So anyway, I loved this book. And I mean, you just have to go and read or listen to these audiobooks or these physical books, because this series is so good. Oh my God, it is so good. So 5 stars for this book. Book number 7 is possibly, so I am counting it as a book that I read, even though it was more or less a DNF. I don't know if there are any rules regarding this, but I read it as a physical book, translated from the English to Icelandic. So this is called A Stranger in the House by Shari LaPena. And Shari LaPena, she's written several thrillers and is quite well known. She's a Canadian author, as far as I know, I think. Anyway, this book is just so bad. It is so bad. It is so bad and so boring. The only reason for why I didn't DNF it after the first 2 chapters is that there was this tiny thing that hooked me and made me want to know who done it, basically. So I read the first 2 chapters, and then I just kind of and then I read the last 2 chapters, so I could find out who done it. I thought I don't want to spoil this book. I can't recommend it because I thought it was horrible, but at the same time, maybe your tastes in thrillers is different from mine, and it's quite also possible that the translation ruined it. Sometimes I find I don't know who translated this. Usually Icelandic translations are done really well, but yeah, I don't know this. I don't know who. I haven't heard about this translator, but we as a collective nation put a lot of pride into translations, because there's this strong desire to keep Icelandic alive and healthy as a language. And one of the ways to do that is to obviously make sure that books are translated. And so learning translations, going through, it's a thing. Publishers usually don't just publish trashy translations. I don't think that this is a very good translation for me, but then again, maybe they don't put a lot of money into just these kind of cheaper, I don't want to make value judgments, but these type of maybe they would put more money if it's more of a award-winning book or something. I don't know, but this was just so boring. I gave it 1 star because I felt that I did read the last chapter, so technically I did read the book, but yeah, it wasn't good. Book number 8. That was an Icelandic book by our Nobel laureate Halldór Laxness. You can see his name here, Halldór Kiljan Laxness. It's called Iceland's Bell, and you have a picture here. So it's been translated to English, and this is a very interesting story. So basically, one of the main characters is Árni Magnússon, whose biography I read earlier in the month. And then there are there are like three main, like it follows the story of three main characters. It's like in three parts. I did enjoy this book. Halldór Laxness's writing style can be sometimes quite unusual. He will do like weird things with spelling and uses a lot of Latinized or Danicized versions of words that I have no idea what mean. And it was written in the 1940s, so the first edition was published in 1943. But I really enjoyed reading about the life back in the late 17th and early 18th century in Iceland, the trials and tribulations of the characters in the book. And even though the book is based on real events, there was like this huge court case and where a husband accused his wife of sleeping with Árni Magnússon, and then there was the fire in Copenhagen in 1720 something. So there are real events happening here. It is definitely very interesting. The problem that I have is that in January I read a play that Halldór himself adapted from this novel. And I didn't realize until I was like halfway through the play that it was based on this book. And so so it was completely spoiled for me. And of course, this is a very famous book. Everybody kind of in Iceland, at least everybody over 30 or something, they know about this book. They know about the plot, the characters. One of the characters is very famous, like as a character. He was kind of like a characterization of an Icelander, so people know this book. But I feel that I would have enjoyed it much better if I had read it before I read the play, so that it wouldn't, because he takes portions of the book straight into the play, right? So it wasn't as enjoyable. But I think it's definitely one of his best books. I give it 4 stars, and I would recommend that you would find the translation and read it if you're interested in kind of the history of historical events in Iceland back in the day, and just reading about, historical fiction. So, yeah. So book number 9 is False Witness by Karen Slaughter, that I listened to as an audiobook. I have read several of Karen Slaughter's thrillers, and I really like them. And she has done, she's written like, I think, 20 or whatever thrillers. So she's a very seasoned author. And, at first I really didn't like it. There's like a lot of COVID plays a big role in the book. But, as soon as I kind of got into it, it was a very thrilling, very suspenseful, made you like anxious and sad and happy and all the things. So it's a good book for sure. And I'm giving it 4 stars. And I have already recorded a review, my thoughts and review of this book that will be coming up on my channel at the end of March. Emma, hvað er það? Já, ég veit það. Já, og hvað þá? Sorry, I had to take care of the cat. The 10th book that I read in February is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of the Fairies, or Fairies. I'm also going to be doing a review on this book, my thoughts and review. And all I'm going to tell you is that I absolutely loved it. 5 stars. It's fantastic. And I recommend it. It's a very cozy, lovely, not slow, but just a fantasy with some romance elements in there. And has very strong connections to Iceland, so very nice. The last 2 books that I read were also audiobooks, or not also, were audiobooks. First of them was Nature's Mutiny, How the Little Ice Age of the Long 17th Century Transformed the West and Shaped the Present. So it's basically a history, a little bit of a history of Europe from the middle of the 16th century until middle of the 18th or 19th century, something like that. And the author is taking on, so it's a non-fiction, so the author is like making connections between the Little Ice Age, which was going on at that time, where temperatures dropped and crops were destroyed and all those things, and how that caused certain societal changes and things that happened. It drove a lot of change within how societies were structured and built and stuff like that. So it's, again, if you're interested in history, then it's a fun book, and I thought it was really fascinating. It was talking about different famous scholars and theologians and philosophers and scientists back in the day who were kind of maybe coming up with theories that their religious leaders didn't like, and people were being burned and killed and whatever if they said something that was against the Bible and all those things. So it was a very interesting read. I didn't necessarily I cannot judge it based on its academic merits if it's actually good historical research. I felt that he was saying that the Little Ice Age has caused these, but he kept going on tangents and talking about all sorts of things. So I found some of his conclusions very suspicious, to be honest. But I always enjoy listening to books that talk about the life back in the day. So I'm giving 3 stars because I don't necessarily think that he delivered what the title of the book suggests. And the last book of the month is this one. The translation is Executions in Iceland. So this follows the executions and the really strict laws which put if you committed some sort of a moral, I don't know, immoral thing, like you slept with someone, you weren't married and you got pregnant or whatever, you would put to death. Basically, after the Reformation in Iceland in 1555, something like that, the Lutherans back in the day were just they were, the Puritans or whatever they were called. They were just so boring, nasty people. Everything was forbidden and everything was punished by extreme measures. Whew, it was just crazy. So, and this book is basically talking about these people that were, a few of the people that were executed in Iceland from, like I said, 1550 until 1830 was the last execution in Iceland. And most of these people were women, poor women, who had basically been raped and got pregnant. And in desperation, they would maybe lie and say that they weren't pregnant and then have a baby 2 months later, or they lie under oath, or maybe they would kill the baby as it was born and try to hide it because of desperation of otherwise being basically killed anyway. Or they would lie that someone else was the father and not, it was just such desperation and such intense social injustice. But I would give it 4 stars because it was just very informative historical thing about you know, dark, a very dark age in Iceland. So those are the books that I read in February. It was a really good month. As I said before, I read a lot of books. I can't believe I read so many books, and yeah, I enjoyed them. Iron Gold obviously is my favorite book of the month. It was so good, but a very close contestant is this one. And the majority of the other books were also just entertaining and fun, and I really enjoyed them very much. But that's that. Those were the books I read. I would love to hear from you in the comments if you've read any of these books or if you're interested in reading any of these books. And we'll see you then later on in my next video. Bye bye.